The invisible shift, understanding your internal observer. You don't always notice it right away. It starts quietly, almost invisibly. You walk into a room, join a conversation, or simply exist in a space with other people, and something inside you shifts. Nothing obvious happens. No one points at you. No one says anything directly. But your awareness sharpens in a way that feels uncomfortable. You suddenly become aware of yourself. The way you're standing, the way your hands are placed, the way your face looks when you're not thinking about it. And then the thoughts begin. Do I look awkward right now? Did I say something wrong? Are they noticing something about me? It's subtle at first, just a few passing thoughts. But the more you stay in that moment, the stronger they become. Your attention moves away from what's happening around you and locks onto yourself. Every movement starts to feel slightly unnatural. Every word feels like it needs to be checked before it comes out. And even when you try to act normal, it doesn't feel natural anymore. Because now you're not just being, you're monitoring. Watching yourself from the outside, as if you're both the person in the moment and the observer judging that person at the same time. And that's when the feeling intensifies. A glance from someone across the room feels heavier than it should. A small reaction feels like it means something more. Even silence starts to feel uncomfortable, like it's filled with unspoken judgment. And the strange part is, you know logically that this might not be real. People are focused on their own lives, their own thoughts, their own insecurities. But that understanding doesn't stop the feeling. Because this isn't just about what you know. It's about what your mind has learned to expect. And once your brain expects judgment, it starts looking for it everywhere. Not because it's true, but because it's trying to protect you from something it believes is important. And slowly, without you realizing it, this becomes a pattern. A way of experiencing the world, where instead of simply being present, you are constantly aware of how you might be perceived. Constantly adjusting, filtering, and second-guessing yourself. And over time, that awareness doesn't just stay in social situations. It follows you. It becomes part of the way you think, the way you interpret people, the way you interpret yourself. And that's when a simple thought turns into something deeper. Not just what do they think, but what's wrong with me. And that's where everything begins to change. The prediction trap, why it feels so real. Now here's the part that most people never stop to question. You're not actually seeing judgment. You're predicting it. There's a difference. Because in most situations, you don't have direct access to what other people are thinking. You can't hear their thoughts. You can't confirm their opinions. But your brain doesn't wait for certainty. It fills in the gaps on its own. It takes small incomplete pieces of information, like a glance, a pause, a neutral expression, and builds a full story around them. And once that story is created, your mind treats it like reality. Not because it's true, but because it feels true. And that feeling is powerful. Strong enough to override logic. Strong enough to make you question yourself, even when nothing actually happened. But this pattern didn't just appear randomly. It was learned. At some point, your brain connected attention with risk. Maybe you were judged in the past. Maybe you were criticized, laughed at, or misunderstood. Maybe you felt exposed in a moment where you didn't feel ready, and your brain remembered that. Not as a clear memory you think about every day, but as a pattern, a rule it follows automatically. If people are looking, something could go wrong. So now, every time you're around others, your mind becomes alert. Not in a dramatic way, but in a quiet, constant scanning mode. It starts observing everything: faces, reactions, tone, body language. And while that might sound useful, it comes with a cost. Because the more you scan, the more you find. Even when there's nothing there, your brain isn't just collecting information, it's interpreting it. And when your default expectation is judgment, your interpretations become biased. Neutral becomes negative. Silence becomes suspicious. A normal expression becomes a hidden opinion. And slowly your perception shifts. Not because the world changed, but because the way you read it did. And that's why it feels so real. Because your mind is constantly feeding you evidence that supports the story it already believes. A glance confirms it. A small reaction confirms it. Even your own discomfort confirms it. And the more this cycle repeats, the stronger it becomes. Until eventually, it doesn't feel like a possibility anymore. It feels like a fact. Like people are always watching, always noticing, always forming opinions about you. And that belief changes the way you behave, the way you speak, the way you exist in social situations. Because now, you're not just interacting with people, you're trying to manage how you're seen by them. And that pressure is where the real problem begins. the weight of calculation, the cycle tightens. And once that pressure takes hold, everything starts to feel heavier than it should. Because now, every interaction carries an invisible weight. You're not just talking, you're calculating. You're not just listening, you're analyzing. Every word you say passes through a filter before it comes out. Does this sound right? Will this be understood? Could this be judged? And while that might seem like control, it actually does the opposite. It pulls you out of the moment. It disconnects you from natural flow. Instead of responding, you hesitate. Instead of expressing, you adjust. And the more you do that, the more unnatural it feels, which only reinforces the belief that something is wrong, that you need to try harder, that you need to fix something about yourself. And this is where the cycle tightens, because the more you try to avoid judgment, the more aware you become of it. Your focus narrows, your attention locks onto yourself, and that awareness turns into self-consciousness, where you're no longer just experiencing the moment, you're observing yourself inside it, judging your posture, your tone, your expressions, almost like there's a second version of you constantly watching, evaluating, correcting. And that internal observer never really relaxes. It stays active, even after the interaction ends. You leave the conversation, but your mind doesn't. It goes back, replays what happened, rechecks what you said, re-evaluates how it might have been perceived. And suddenly, a simple moment turns into something you analyze long after it's over. Not because it mattered that much, but because your brain is trying to make sure you didn't get it wrong. But here's the problem. When your mind is constantly trying to avoid being judged, it creates a version of you that feels less real, less natural, less present, because you're always adjusting yourself based on what you think others might be thinking. And over time, that creates distance. Distance between who you are and how you express yourself. And that distance feels like discomfort, like something is off, like you're not fully yourself. And the more that feeling grows, the more you try to control it. But control doesn't solve it, it feeds it. Because every attempt to fix how you're perceived sends a message to your brain that there is something to fix, that there is something wrong, and that belief keeps the cycle alive, quietly, consistently, in the background of every interaction you have, breaking the automatic loop, a real shift. So now the real shift begins when you start questioning the pattern itself, not just the feeling. Because up until this point, everything has been automatic. You walk into a space, your awareness increases, your mind starts scanning, and the loop begins without you even noticing. But the moment you see it happening in real time, something changes. You begin to recognize the exact point where your thoughts shift. That moment when your attention moves away from the outside world and locks onto yourself. When your brain starts predicting judgment instead of simply observing reality. And instead of following that process like you always have, you pause. Not to stop it forcefully, not to fight it, but to understand it. Because what your mind is doing isn't random. It's trying to protect you. It believes that by predicting judgment, it can help you avoid it. That by analyzing everything, it can keep you safe from discomfort. But the irony is, the more it tries to protect you, the more it traps you. Because it keeps you focused on something that isn't actually happening in the way you think it is. And once you realize that, the pattern starts to lose its strength. You begin to notice that most of the judgment you feel isn't coming from other people. It's coming from your own expectations. From the standards you think you have to meet. From the version of yourself you believe you need to be. And when those expectations aren't met perfectly, your mind reacts. Not because something went wrong externally, but because something feels off internally. And that awareness creates a different kind of control. Not control over every thought or every reaction, but control over how much importance you give them. Because you don't need to stop the thoughts completely. You just need to stop treating them as facts. The moment you see them as assumptions instead of reality, they start to feel lighter, less urgent, less convincing. And slowly, the space between you and your thoughts grows. You still notice things, but they don't pull you in the same way. You still feel aware, but it doesn't turn into pressure. And that's where things begin to shift. Not instantly, not perfectly, but gradually. In a way that feels real and sustainable. Because you're no longer trying to eliminate the feeling. You're changing your relationship with it. And that changes everything about how it affects you. Finding real presence, the weight lifts. And as that shift continues, something else begins to change quietly in the background. The way you experience people starts to feel different. Not because they changed, but because you're no longer filtering everything through the same lens. You begin to notice that most people are not paying nearly as much attention to you as you once believed. They're thinking about their own words, their own behavior, their own insecurities, just like you were. And that realization doesn't come as a sudden breakthrough. It comes in small moments. Moments where you speak without overthinking and nothing goes wrong. Moments where you act naturally and no one reacts the way you feared they would. Moments where you realize that the judgment you expected never actually existed. And slowly those moments start to build trust. Not in other people but in yourself. Trust that you don't need to monitor every detail to be okay. That you don't need to control every impression to be accepted. That you can exist without constantly evaluating yourself. And the more that trust grows, the quieter that internal voice becomes. The one that keeps asking, what do they think? Did I do something wrong? Was that okay? It doesn't disappear completely, but it loses its authority. It becomes just another thought, not something you have to obey. And that's the difference. Because you don't need to become completely free of self-awareness to feel comfortable. You just need to stop letting it control you. Most of the pressure you feel doesn't come from people. It comes from the way your mind interprets them, from the stories it creates, from the expectations it builds. And once you see that clearly, the weight starts to lift. Not all at once, but enough for you to feel the difference. Enough for you to experience moments where you're simply present, where you're not watching yourself, not analyzing every move, not predicting every reaction, just being there without the constant need to adjust. And that's where everything becomes lighter. Because the truth is, people are not watching you as closely as you think. They're not analyzing every detail the way your mind does. Most of them are too busy thinking about themselves, just like you were. And once that becomes real to you, not just something you understand logically but something you actually feel, the cycle begins to break. If this is something you've been experiencing for a long time, then you already know this isn't random. Comment aware if this felt real to you. And if you want more videos that help you understand what your mind is really doing behind the scenes, you know what to do.